Hey folks, Kyle from Andrew Hilton here. We've got something really special coming up for you August 4th at 6 o'clock. We've got ourselves a little bit of a lager tasting, but with a little bit of a twist as well. So we're going to do a couple of classic styles. We're going to do a Hell, we're going to do a Pilsner, but it's summer, and sometimes I just want something maybe a little simpler, maybe a beer with a crown on it. This is Spud's for you. It is a potato lager. It's establishment's take on an adjunct lager, but instead of using corn and rice as their adjunct, they used Calgarian potatoes to create a very light, easy drinking lager. Something fun, something silly, and then we're going to dive into the real meat of it. So from Snake Lake, we've got their Lakeshore Lager. Now this is a German style Helles, so bright gold, very pretty, very easy drinking, a little bit of a noble hop note. And then we're going to go into a German Pils, the Luminosity by Cabin. Now, I don't know if you've been in here recently, but Cabin has been bloody tricky to get. But the one beer that's always been available has been Luminosity. And it's a pretty great beer. It's one that we don't talk about very much because we're all about, super saturation or what their 5 new seasonals are this week. But Luminosity is pretty great, and we don't talk about it very much, and that is a shame. Finally, from Campio Brewing, we have their Smash, which stands for single malt and single hop. One type of barley, one type of hops, made into a summertime easy drinking lager. Hell has a history. Pilsner has a history. Smash beers have a really interesting history. And we also have this one from Establishment. It's going to be a lot of fun. All that and more. August 4th, 6 o'clock. Hope you can join us.
What the hell are Calgarian potatoes?
Bloody hell if I know. Potatoes grown in Calgary. Hi everyone, Kyle with Andrew Hilton here. Welcome to our Wednesday night lager tasting. Now, we've got some real history to get through here, folks. So we're going to start with some Joseph Grohl and some Gabriel Settelmeyer. We're going to work our way through the history of Pilsner and pale lager, refrigeration, and pale malt roasting and everything. But we kind of have to start at the end. We have to start with American-style lagers because our very first beer is this Spud's for You Potato Lager by Establishment. So why is this a potato lager? Well, this is being done as an adjunct-forward lager. So when I say adjunct, what do I mean? I mean a grain that is added to the bill either because they cannot get an ingredient or, in modern parlance, because it's cheaper to use something else. So, is it the case that big breweries simply use corn and rice to make a beer that's a lot cheaper? Short answer, yes. Longer answer, yes, sort of. So, let's dive into a little bit about what a pale lager is and why the American brewing establishment, hilariously not including Establishment Brewing, does enjoy this style of beer to encourage you to, as Establishment says, taste less and buy more. So the history of the adjunct lager in the United States comes in at the very start of the 20th century as we are kind of post the Pilsner craze of the mid-19th century kind of sweeping through Western Europe. We've now reached the United States, and people are starting to say, hey, that crazy lager thing they've got going on there in Europe, we should get that over here. But there's a problem with that. 2 problems, really. The first one is they have the wrong type of barley. When you're making a beer like this, you have nowhere to hide. Any little flaw, any little imperfection is going to show up. If you're really just taking a beer, you're adding a very, very tiny whisper of hops, you've got an almost perfectly clear beer. My glass. Hey folks, Kyle from Andrew Hilton here, so it doesn't. We've got something really special coming up for you August 4th at 6 o'clock. We've got ourselves a little bit of a lager tasting. If you start with that base, then there's really nowhere to hide your mistakes. So they had the wrong type of barley. They had what's called 6-row barley. Now in brewing parlance, there are 2 types of barley. There's 2-row barley, but that's most of the barleys you get these days, at least for the brewing side. It's reasonably high in sugar or starch, which is converted into sugars, and relatively low in proteins. On the other hand, 6-row barley, which is what brewers in North America in the early 20th century had, has a lot of tannin in the husk, and it has a whole bunch of protein to it. Now we'll look back to why that protein is important in a minute. But the other big problem that they had in North America is they either didn't have hops or they had the wrong type of hops. Most of these other beers that we're going to taste, not so much the last one, but certainly your traditional German style and European style lagers, they were brewed with the Saaz and Tettnanger hop strains, which were not found in North America at all. And they were left with the difficult decision to import it from Europe at great expense. And this is, again, before we had freeze-dried, Mylar bags that you could actually ship frozen from Europe so you didn't get horrible oxidation. So they'd be getting stale hops from Europe, or they could try and grow them here, but hop growing is actually a fairly complicated process involving rhizomes and all sorts, and also the Europeans weren't happy about shipping rhizomes of their bumper crop hops over to the North American properties. So that's the problem with the hops. The problem with the barley was actually a little more complicated. Yes, it was a little bit more tannic because it had a little more skin to it, a little more husk, so the beer tasted quite sour. But the other problem was the massive amount of protein. That extra protein was would do the same thing in a traditional North American early 20th century lager as what protein is doing in New England IPAs. It would make the beer cloudy. It would give it kind of that milkshake sort of characteristic. It would create a very different style of beer to what the lagers that these brewers wanted to make tasted like. So what was the solution? Well, they introduced corn for two reasons. One, they had lots of it and it was quite inexpensive to use. And two, corn actually solved their protein problem for them. Because what that protein is in the beer to do, and why they still use 6-row to this day, at least in small amounts, is that that extra protein can break down complex starches, like the starches that are in corn, or if you're making a wheat beer, you'll very often use 6-row barley, or if you're making a rye ale, you'll use 6-row, purely to break down those more complex starches. So by blending in about 30% corn, the extra sweetness in the corn would dial back some of that tannic aggressiveness from the grain husk. You'd be using less 6-row barley, so you wouldn't be getting as much tannic aggression from the husks. And all that extra protein, because you're using 6-row barley instead of 2, all of that protein is basically turning on the corn, which doesn't contain its own proteins for breaking down the starch. It has to borrow them from the barley. So this solved a lot of problems for them. Now, there are definitely some hazy lagers out there, but they're not very good. So let's talk a little bit about what changed next. Well, first, let's have a beer. Let's try this potato lager. Now, this is in support of Grow Calgary, which is a food access charity in Calgary, and they are using local potatoes, I believe. You get it in your mouth. I don't really get potato, but I do get a right down the middle kind of North American style lager. Interesting thing I actually read when I was reading the press release about this from Establishment, they actually brewed this to a higher alcohol strength and then cut it with water afterwards, because that's what the big boys like Molson and Labatt do, which, I mean, good for them for being that tongue-in-cheek. And I guess if you're looking to make this style that is traditional, they'd be doing like step decoction mashing for doing a traditional Czech-style pils. Yeah. You're not really making a North American beer unless, you make a better beer and then you water it down to maximize profits. So let's get ourselves up to World War II, and all of a sudden we hit a big grain shortage. Now, the original problems in the early 20th century have mostly gone away. They can get German-style hops in North America. They just choose not to use them because they're expensive. Mostly because they basically trained the North American audience, realizing that hops are the most expensive part of the beer, to drink beer with less and less and less hops because it maximized their profits. When they hit World War II, they discovered that there's a massive grain shortage, and it's the oh no, not our most expensive grain, whatever are we to do? And they started blending in rice. Now, there was a lot of rice available in the United States at the time, largely because of a huge anti-Japanese sentiment that was going on, the whole Pearl Harbor thing. Now, as a result, they blend in all this extra rice. They've already got a pretty big corn base, and they're thinking, oh man, we're basically spending nothing to make this. We've basically taught North Americans to be afraid of hops. We've dialed back the barley to the point where the beer barely will ferment. They actually had to go back to using 6-row at this point just to get the dang thing to ferment all the way through. They brew it up to a high test beer, and then they cut it back down just with water. Now, this is World War II. There's shortages. Surely they'd go back to, using the more expensive ingredient after the war was over. And they certainly wouldn't experiment with things like foam enhancers and fake hop extracts and all that sort of. No, you already know how this story ends. North American breweries literally twisted it to the point where it broke, to the point where Schlitz Brewing, I can't remember if it was a foam enhancer or an artificial hop flavoring. They tried to use so few natural ingredients in their beer. They tried to make it so artificial that the beer went off in cans. So if you ever heard the rumor where you can't get a beer cold and then let it warm up and then refrigerate it again, That's actually because of Schlitz, because if you did that to a Schlitz beer in the mid-1970s to early 80s, it would form this gelatinous snot-like compound in the bottom of the can, and the whole thing was ruined. Wow. That scandal is actually what took Schlitz from the third largest brewer in North America to being out of business within 15 years. Schlitz just straight doesn't exist anymore. But I still have people who come in to this day, not very often, but they repeat that old tale to me. It's like, oh, I sure hope you're not getting your beer cold, letting it warm up, then putting it into your fridge. It's like, yeah, it's A, not 1979, B, that brewery's not in business anymore, and C, I don't think that ingredient still exists. Crazy. So, yeah. And Craig's right, clean, fresh, nothing weird. Eric does get potato on this, and I'm not convinced I do. Do you get potato on this?
No.
Gelatinous, not like compound is the next big thing. I guess we'll see. Schlitz is the shits.
Schlitz, yeah.
So that's everything you never ever wanted to know about North American lager. Why it's so bad, why establishment's poking fun at it, and why when, Molson 67 decides they're going to make Molson 67 IPA, why, they really are just these people who have no idea what the hell they're doing. A lot of their brew kettles, they don't even have the headspace to add hops, because when you add hops to a boiling wort, it actually will foam up. Most of the brew kettles, they haven't brewed with hops in so long that they don't even have headspace anymore, so you literally can't hop a beer in their existing equipment. And they just also have this prevailing culture of, taste less, buy more, and this pervasive culture that, the consumer ultimately will buy what we tell them to buy, because packaging and marketing and, women in bikinis on TV sitting in hot tubs, that's what sells beer, not what's actually in the glass. And that's why whenever I see somebody like a bigger brewery buy a small brewery out, I pretty much just write that brewery off forever. I mean, prove me wrong, Bandit Peak, go ahead, but I'm never convinced by that. Ooh, Eric's getting really into this potato thing. All right. I'll keep going at it. Okay, not a cooked potato, but yeah, the almost pear-like raw potato, like bitter pear. So this isn't a serious beer, and no, they are making this fully tongue-in-cheek, completely having fun with it. They're literally doing it by they straight up said they could make this beer better by not making it this way. They made it this way to, proof of concept, to prove just how difficult it is to actually make an adjunct heavy North American style beer. Because while it's a not very good style, and that was terrible English, it's incredibly difficult to make well, and it's even more difficult to make consistently. So this is more a proof of concept science experiment that turned out pretty tasty than it is a serious beer at all.
Definitely reminds me of Budweiser.
It does remind you of Budweiser?
Oh, yeah.
It's not as sweet as Budweiser, though.
That could be true, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which of those cheap beers it reminds me of closest.
Yeah.
I think it's Kokanee.
I also love how you pronounce it Kokanee.
My dad would like this.
Yeah?
Yeah. Like shit beer.
That's fair. My dad also likes shitty beer. Mm-hmm.
When I told you the other day, that crap beer I had was like the most refreshing thing that I've had in ages, just because I've been on the hell-bent on the heavy train for years.
Yeah. And
drank this piece of crap, and it was glorious.
Well, let's jump into that then.
More crap.
Well, let's jump into the, very first pale lager revolution that happened in Europe at the time. I don't know if everybody's just jumping on what's going to be the next big thing. I actually don't know what the next big thing is. There's nothing obvious. I don't think the next big thing is the next big thing yet.
I don't know.
We don't know yet. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit of brewing history here as we get through the next two beers.
Well, bats.
Let's talk about.
Actually.
Yep. Let's talk about Joseph Groll. Joseph Groll, in 1842, was a Bavarian brewer who had kind of come around to the idea of making a pale lager in this particular style. Now, the Bavarians had been playing around with this type of beer for quite some time. In 1794, there was actually a brewing manual that talked about the incredible advances in making bottom fermented lagers and all of that, that actually had become a pretty big seller and was considered kind of the reference book on lagers, and it was written by a Bavarian. And Bavarian lager at the time was very, very good. The other couple of things that happened about the same time was the invention in the UK of this pale, indirectly fired malt. So up to this point, malt would have been direct fired in the sense that they would have just dried it over a fire. And if you're over a fire, you're going to get smoke, you're going to get ash, it's going to roast the barley a darker color. So if you've got dry roasted malt, it's not going to be pale. And it's certainly not going to be clean, and it's probably going to have a distinct smoky character to it. So right around this time in history, we start getting these pale style malts and this, reference book on how to brew a lager. And yet until Joseph Groll goes to the city of Pilsen in about 1840, 1842, and the people in Pilsen, they're almost at the point of revolt. They are so tired of these spicy, badly made, no shelf life, top fermented ales that they're literally pouring out barrels of beer in the streets and rioting. And so the city fathers get together and like, oh wow, this is apparently a huge problem. We need to fix this. We need to make a beer that's clean and easy drinking and satisfies everyone and has a long shelf life and is really consistent. So they literally start a city-owned, publicly owned brewery, which becomes Pilsner Urquell. And the very first Pilsner is brewed there in 1842 on what would become Remembrance Day, and it becomes an absolute sensation. Pilsner goes from being a completely non-existent style, the pale lager style not extant on earth, to being absolutely the biggest thing in the world. And two other things happen right about the same time. Railroads start to become really, really big, and communication by telegraph and the ability to get a Paris newspaper in London the next day starts to become a possibility. So all of a sudden, you have a big sensation that's happening in the Kingdom of Bohemia and throughout the German countries. All of a sudden people are reading about it in Paris and London and Madrid, and they're all talking about this Pilsner style beer, and it becomes an absolutely massive thing. Within 5 years there's 35 breweries just in Prague, and they're just making Pilsners. And then by kind of the later part of the 1800s, even the Bavarians are starting to break down and say, okay, we've held out as long as we could. They basically took our Bavarian techniques, they borrowed one of our Bavarian brewmasters, they stole all our ideas, and they went to Bohemia and they made this beer, and the Bohemians didn't like it. They held out, they held the line, they said, you can't import Pilsners, you can't brew a Pilsner in our territory, this is forbidden, you can't do this here, this is not our heritage is lagers, but they're dark lagers with a smoky flavor, how dare you. And they held out for about a good 40 years. And finally, Gabriel Sedlmayr of the Spaten Brewery, who was actually good friends with Joseph Groll, actually went to England with Joseph Groll and discovered this new experimental pale malt with him in England. He says, well, this is fucking stupid. We're leaving money on the table. I'm sitting in a beer garden, and what do I see at every single table? A whole bunch of pale lagers being brewed everywhere except Bavaria. Why are we just missing out on this money train? Like, this is dumb. So the Bavarians said, well, yes, we're not doing Pilsners. That's filthy Bohemian beer. We need to do our own thing. So they did, and they called it Helles, which means pale or golden. This is the Munich style or Bavarian style lager that the Bavarians could have made before the Czechs ever got there, Bohemians ever got there. But they didn't, because they didn't think it would catch on, and then when it started getting really popular, they dug in their heels and crossed their arms and said, no. This is eventually what they came around to. This is different from Pilsners in the sense that Pilsners have a lot more earthy bitterness. American-style Pilsners tend to have a lot more hop character. And kind of your classic Danish, Western European Pilsners tend to be a fair bit sweeter than this. So let's try a Helles.
Story. Wow.
Thanks, Aaron. Holding on for 40 years makes you think it was just one star. No, it was just Bavarians in general, it seems like. They were brewing Pilsners elsewhere in Germany. It was just Bavaria that I think were just pissed and bitter that they missed out on the Pilsner thing, who just refused until like 1898, 1899, when Gabriel Sedlmayr starts making Helles. Now we definitely do get a noble hop bitterness here, and I apologize, Craig, I don't know what the hop is on this. I spent more time looking into getting all of the details of like the early history of lagers right, and very little time actually looking into the beers themselves, so that's on me. Also interesting that we're drinking a beer, it's 4.8%, this color, easy drinking beer called Lakeshore Lager. Now with questions about the hopping, because I also get that noble, spicy, very slightly cheesy hop. I'm gonna guess it's something like Saaz or Tettnanger, but I couldn't actually say. Dave Grohl's grandfather. I'm also surprised just how much bigger this is. I'd love to go back to the This Spud's for You, but Aaron finished it.
I drank it all.
Yeah, you did. Bloody lush, that guy.
Small cans.
Small cans, I'm sure it is.
Cans.
Now, the reason I'm commenting on weight on this is that this is an all barley beer, whereas the This Spud's for You is the adjunct. For those of you who don't have an Aaron in attendance and still have some This Spud's for You, I think if you try to go back, it is going to be much, much lighter, and I would be very surprised if it wasn't slightly sweeter as well. Unfortunately, I don't have that opportunity.
Maybe we'll just have to open. Are they in 4s?
They're in 6s.
6s.
Yeah. It's okay, Aaron. It's fine. I'm mostly just busting your chops. Mostly.
This is good.
This is very good. Yeah, like this is rich. It's spicy. It's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I think it almost is a disservice to it that it's just packaged as like Lakeshore Lager. It looks a little less serious than it actually is, because I will say the more of this I have, the more that bitterness is kind of building up in the back of my tongue. I think if I recommended this to like a Budweiser drinker, they'd get through like one can and be furious with me, because this is 20 IBUs, which is, we sell pale ales that are like 24, 25.
Yeah.
This has got more bitterness to it, I think, than a lot of people are going to be expecting. Okay, good. And Craig does confirm the Spuds does taste more sweet. I thought it would. I'm curious if it also tastes watery after this.
Falls apart over time.
I'm just curious if the fact that the beer was brewed to a higher strength and then watered, if the fact that the potatoes, while they're there, they're not contributing as much weight, as much mouthfeel, as much protein as the barley would. I'm curious if it comes off watery, not because it's a bad beer, but just because there's less to it.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, we got through the second one a little faster than the first. Let's get on to the Luminosity. This is by Cabin, and as I said in the promo, getting Cabin beer lately has been a little bit tricky. I was there yesterday. What did they have for me in stock? 2 flats of cucumber sour and absolutely nothing else. Happily, I was able to get some Supersat at Connect. But yeah, Cabin's been a hot ticket lately. They are super, super busy. However, I was in their new bay. It is coming along really quite quickly. It looks beautiful in there. I'm hoping they'll add on some more tap room at some point because they don't have a lot of seating. But it is looking really, really nice in there. They are going to have a lot more space very soon. Hopefully these stock shortages are going to be a thing of the past as soon as their new space comes online. Will it be the beach beer that Snake Lake hopes it will be? I don't know. I didn't take a whole lot of this one. Purely because their last Hellas that was kind of this style didn't do that well. I don't know. And you're right, Snake Lake does have some serious game. Like, this is a better beer than it has any business being. And I wonder if this kind of ties into Eric's question of, will this be the beach beer that they're, hoping it'll be? I think that this is actually such a good beer, it might actually hurt its saleability as that beach time crusher. I hope not, but just talking out loud, I think this might be a little too much beer to just be an everyday beach time crusher. All right, Cabin Luminosity. So like I said, what were the Germans up to, while they were pretending that Pilsner didn't exist in Bavaria? Well, they were getting merrily along with this because they also had access to that brewing manual from 1794. It was actually published in German 5 years before it was published in, I assume, Czech. It wasn't the country of Czechoslovakia at the time, it was the Kingdom of Bohemia, so I don't know what the secondary language would have been. Anyway, the Germans did get on with it. The city of Dortmund made their Dortmunder export. German Pilsner started popping up here, there, and everywhere, but of course, there wasn't a broader Germany. It was a whole bunch of smaller countries. And so a whole bunch of different styles started to pop up all over the place. And the other nice thing is Pilsner doesn't violate the Reinheitsgebot of 1516 like a lot of your smaller regional styles that might have used spices or herbs or tea or whatever. It's just the same things that go into every other German beer of water, yeast, barley, and hops. So as a result, this style wasn't really, prohibited by the Reinheitsgebot, and they could brew it all over the place. So a unified German Pilsner style was non-existent, especially since Dortmund had Dortmunder, and you had the Germans the Bavarians, eventually coming along with Helles. But eventually, German Pils came to be known as a not as overtly hoppy as the Czechs, certainly not as hoppy as the new school American style Pilsners, drier than the rest of the Western European Pilsners, kind of a medium dry, nicely bitter but not terribly aromatic Pilsner. And wow, are we splitting little tiny shades of gray there when we're talking about Pilsners. Okay, and yes, Cabin is already brewing off-site, but they would like to be brewing everything in-house, at least for their seasonals, I think. And the fact is, Cabin's just way, way, way too small. Even if they took all of their supersat and brewed it off-site, and I think most of it is at this point, they're still too small back there. It's such a tiny space. Like, establishments working on, I think they're almost into their third bay now. Annex has like 3 or 4 bays. 88's got like another 2 bays added onto their original at this point, and Cabin's still just in their first one, and they're building their second. I mean, when you're left to be, a quarter the size of Annex in terms of floor space, it does kind of cut into how much you can really do with the space you have, just because there isn't enough space. Oh, the lemon on this, though. Just that bright, fresh citrus note. And then the spices, and then the herbs, and then the pepper, and then the earth. Oh, I love good Pilsner, and this is really good Pilsner. Sean, I respect you. You're right. I think the Luminosity has got this one. Absolutely rocket. Another yard event. Another yard. Shut up, Aaron. Another yard event. We can do another yard event. Yeah.
What is this?
Well, okay.
Oh, geez, I've missed 7 million.
You have.
Yeah.
You've just been kind of tootling around, drinking your beer, staring off into space, making fun of me.
Good job here.
Sure, Aaron.
I can do.
You could do a worse job. That's true. Oh, so fun things that are coming up for the beer tasting. While we're talking about events and all that, next week no beer tasting because Aaron is busy. Aaron is off somewhere. Where are you off to, Aaron?
Van Pooper.
Thanks, Aaron. We won't ask you to speak on camera again for a while. So Aaron is going to Vancouver for a little while, and after that, we're back on the 18th to do our fruit beer event, which we'll talk about here in a sec. And then I am gone for 2 weeks. I am gone the 25th through the 1st. So we will have, I think Nigel and Mike are either going to do 2 together or they're each going to take one. Yeah, so you'll still have Aaron and his Van Pooper. So lucky all of you. And then I will be back after that. And then following up shortly after that, we are off to Sylvan Lake, assuming we don't have a 4th wave lockdown.
Oh, you're just saying that.
We're just saying it out loud.
Locking it in.
Because if I don't say it on camera, we'll keep putting it off. Right. Now we have to do it.
It's going to rule, though.
We're going to go to Snake Lake. We're going to hang out with Adam and those folks, and we're going to do a live on-location beer tasting with all of you, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
So water slides.
Oh, right, there are water slides. It's going to be a good time.
No, there aren't.
No.
There's mini golf and probably go-karts. We're going to do it all.
I think mini go-karts and a beer tasting is a terrible, terrible combination.
Golf carts.
Yeah, Aaron is cut off in potato lager. 1/2 can went straight to his head. Did you eat something today, Aaron?
Yes, I've been. Anyway. What are we having on the 18th?
What are we having on the 18th? Yeah. That's a good question, Aaron. Why don't you tell us?
I don't know.
No, I'm not going to make you do it. All right. So coming up on the 18th, we are going to dive into fruit beer for a week again. Because let's be fair, it's been a weird summer. Like, I've tried to put cool things there, like let's do a smoke beer event, or let's just do this, or let's do that, and there just haven't been the beer releases. I don't know if maybe the breweries are starting to run into some of the logistical challenges that we've been running to with wine and with scotch. Also, may I point out how good a scotch section actually looks for a change. We got 15 new whiskeys in today, and I kind of rejigged everything. Ignore the fact that off camera, the new arrival section is completely empty, and I just moved it all in here so it didn't look so bad. But no, getting ingredients, getting specialty grains, getting hops from Europe, getting even cans and bottles. Like, we haven't had Bud Light in bottles for like 3 weeks because there's a bottle shortage. I mean, no loss there, but you know, it's starting to hit, and that's why we're not seeing so many cool ingredients. But we are going to do a fruit beer week. We got some fun stuff lined up here. From Phillips, we have their citrus lager. This is in benefit for reforesting BC, you know, to make up for the thousands of acres that are burning down every day at the minute. And also being logged by the BC government, yes. Next up, we have Tangerine Trees, which you would think would be a tangerine sour by establishment. It is not. It is a dry hop sour with orange zest, and I think it might be their best sour in a little while. I really like separate together, but Tangerine Trees is just growing on me and growing on me. I think it's the second strongest sour in the store after the Untold Glow by Annex. Keeping on with kind of a Mexican theme with the folks at Snake Lake, they have their Siesta Fiesta, which is Margarita Gosa, which I'm very excited for because, you know, lime and salt go really well in a beer. And finally, the one I'm really stoked on, Lingonberry Sour. I love lingonberries, like to a ludicrous degree. This one's by Moody Brewing, the folks who make the Lavender Sour and the Flamingo. So they're clearly comfortable with making really ripping good sours with weird ingredients. So that's going to be fantastic. Really excited for that. And that's coming up in 2 Wednesdays. Next week, no event at all.
Gives me more time to make a stupid promo.
It does give you more time to do a stupid promo.
Week's too short.
Eric, if you want to come to Sylvan Lake with us, there is more than enough room in the car.
That would rule.
That'd be really fun. Yeah, that's an open invitation, Eric. If you want to come, you can come.
We're going to be renting a bus.
We could end up renting a bus. That might be a thing we end up having to do. Speaking of which, I talked about at the start of COVID that we wanted to get that party bus up to the breweries.
Yeah.
When I was there yesterday, I put a word in the ear of a few of the people who I've been talking to. There's nobody at Cabin except like one taproom staff, so I didn't get to talk to those dudes. But I did touch base with Mike and Dave at Establishment, and I touched base with the folks at 88 very briefly, even though Jesse's on holidays this week. Sounds like that's a real thing that could be happening. We need to get some ducks in a row here, but I could see that happening before Halloween.
Party bus.
I think it'd be fun.
That'll rule.
Yeah. Okay, let's move into the last final beer. We have Campio Smash Lager. Okay, Campio, that packaging, do better. Do much better than that. That's dreadful. That's absolutely shameful, and that's why nobody's buying it. And it's not because of what's in the can, because what's in the can is absolutely fantastic. Now, as stupid as the can is, Smash is a real thing. It stands for single malt and single hop. The single hop here is 2-row Pilsner malt. And I want to say the single hop is Equinox, but Equinox, it's one of the E hops. I did know that 3 beers ago. I just can't remember it at the minute. So the idea here is take 2 ingredients. So no using specialty grains, no getting cute with rice or corn or potatoes, no, coming up with your own special hop hash or anything else like that, which is a real thing. No, you have 1 hop, 1 malt, add yeast to it, and however it turns out, it turns out. Now you could do a decoction mash like you do with traditional Pilsner. But I think it's more fun just to say, okay, we've only got 2 real ingredients here. How can we change that? How can we twist that to make the best beer possible? Or how can we let the ingredients stand on their own so strongly that the beer just shines through with this is how good these ingredients can be? You spotted a little lie. Yes, there is a new Lismore 12. Getting a little off topic here, but how did I find all the new single malts for the store? I literally went on Liquor Connect. I selected all single malt whiskey and sorted by in stock and from Scotland. There were about 360 whiskeys, and I brought in anything that wasn't ludicrously overpriced and looked cool. I think there's some real gems back here, actually. If there's an interest in the comments, I'll talk about a couple of the ones I was really proud of. But yeah, it was literally just running through everything. Yeah, but A League of Their Own was good. I actually really liked A League of Their Own. The label's not good.
Not.
Ooh.
Pretty bad.
Lime and like white tea. I gotta say, you know what, maybe I spoke too soon when I said I think the Luminosity is the best thing on the table. This is really doing it for me. In the tasting notes off their website, they said that it was supposed to be like lemon, lime, and white wine characters. And normally when I see somebody say, oh, there's white wine character in their beer, especially when it's like a lager like this, it's like, okay, you ran out of things to say, so you threw in white wine so it would sound fancy. I actually get some wine notes on this in the finish, like a Sauvignon Blanc sort of thing. This I really, really like.
Oh, was that right off the bat? Soy sauce?
Do you get soy?
No, I don't. I don't know if that's what it was.
I get like matcha or white
right
tea or green tea, and then I get pepper in a big way, and then I get like bitter pear, lime, lemon.
What's that?
There's something else in here like dragon
like
fruit
umami.
almost.
It's like hitting me right off the bat.
You're getting an umami thing.
Kind of like an umami thing, but I can't identify it. It's like seasoning salt or something like that.
There is an area in a tin box. There's the Drumadoon Point, which is the 21 year. It's edition 3 in the Explorers series. I've got 3 of those left. Just very quickly, I'll kind of talk about a couple of the new things we got that I think are really cool. Let me just quickly grab them here because they're right behind me. There's this guy here, and the other big one was, yeah, this guy right here. So, like I said, not really a whiskey event, but I'll talk about these two real fast. From Thomatin, they got a new 10-year, but bloody expensive. They're not afraid to charge this one, like $124. It's a 10-year-old, but it's out of a Caribbean rum finish. These guys do really, really neat work with different barreling. Like they're 14 years out of a port cask, they're 12 years out of a sherry. Their Thomatin Origin? Legacy is out of a mix of sherry, bourbon, and virgin oak, so kind of cool stuff. I think they do a good job with the rum cask, so I was kind of excited to get that. I also pre-ordered this, and then they never told me my pre-order was here, and they just dumped it into general stock because there was a huge whiskey shortage, and anybody who pre-ordered was just like, screw you, so we had to pull it out of general stock like a pleb. And then finally, the Dullen 17. Now, I like Dullen. It's part of the Singleton series occasionally. I think it's Singleton of Dufton right now. Yes, it is. But it's been Singleton of Glendullen in the past. Also a 17-year cask strength for $159.95. That's fair value. That's actually a really good deal. So quite excited about that one. Other than that, there's a new Glendronach, there's a new Thrusk, there's all sorts of new fun toys. So lots to see here, which is nice because formerly there was nothing to see here, which was a real shame. Oh dear, Sean, that's a terrible problem for you. Ooh. Should you definitely hit Campio? I don't know. I've only ever really had this and the Alberto Sourus. This is quite good. I wasn't a fan of the Alberto Sourus, and also Campio is part of that Bear Hill Brewing Group, which includes Last Best, yay, Banff Ave, yeah, Jasper, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like this. I like some of Last Best stuff as long as it's not show pony. I haven't overall loved everything from Bear Hill though, especially Banff and Jasper. So, oh, you went back to the Lakeshore in the bit. Oh yeah, after this, the maltiness of a Hellas would be really apparent. So that doesn't surprise me. If not Campio, what breweries? Definitely SYC, definitely Town Square. I believe Trial and Ale is also in Edmonton, and they're absolutely fantastic. There's one more that's just top of my. The folks who make the Wolf, Sea Change Brewing.
Oh yeah.
They're also out of Edmonton and also very, very good. Those would be the top list for me. And also apparently Odd Company, who I don't know. So.
Why? What's wrong with me?
Oh, Aaron, I could get sorry. What's wrong with you? Like in terms of the umami thing?
I don't know what it is. Is it garlic or gasoline right off the bat? Like I can't tell, man.
Aaron has found one of those hops he can't taste. This is your cilantro.
Crazy.
This is why certain hops for me, like Galaxy, don't taste like anything. I've talked about this before. This is a hop, because it is a new school hop, that doesn't taste like anything for you.
Wild.
Yep, and just, yeah, if you're getting garlic in that, you're just not able to taste this hop. You don't have the enzyme in your mouth. It's your cilantro.
Wow.
Yep.
Garlic.
Yep. And it's
Totally
not
garlic.
tasting like that to anyone else, unless they also don't have that enzyme.
Yeah.
But yeah, with some of these new hops, some people just will never
It's
be
like
able to taste them.
sulfuric or farty, I can't tell what it is, man.
Yep.
It's crazy.
But yeah, no, that's a fun
Wild.
thing. Aaron learned something today.
Aaron learned something today. Aaron is. I'm getting out.
Oh, and Eric's actually getting latex off the smash, so you might not be alone.
Oh yeah, interesting.
Oh, and Situation, also very good. Yeah, I should have said Situation as well, because they make great beer. You don't have to keep drinking it, Aaron. Drink something you like.
It's just curious, is all.
All right, folks, I think we're going to call her there. We will see you in 2 weeks for Fruit Beer Summer, and then I'm away for 2 weeks. I have no idea what you're going to taste. Hopefully something good. I'll certainly watch the videos.
Some
It'll be hilarious for me.
big dumb barrel-aged dumb thing Nigel picks. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be some giant, it'll be barley wine week in August, because Nigel's hosting. It'll be hilarious, and I won't have to drink them, so I'll be even happier. Awesome, folks. Thank you so much. Aaron and I are going to tear down a whole bunch of lighting equipment and sound equipment, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful night.